Good evening. Right now, Metro Police are desperately searching for the person or people responsible for killing a man and a woman.
I got a male down in the middle of the street.
Breaking news now, a triple shooting leaves 2 dead.
Never expect for somebody to tell you your loved one was murdered.
This Labor Day will mark 42 years that have haunted the St. Cloud family.
30 years. 30 years this family has waited for answers.
A couple months go by, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you really start to struggle with the idea that the case might not get solved and that somebody might get away with murder.
It's very unfortunate that we have any cold cases at all, and certainly unfortunate that we have as many as we do. And that's why Ryan's work and the work of Project Cold Case is so important.
Hey, thanks for joining us today, June 4th.
Yes.
Facebook Live. Here's Katie Jeffries with me, First Coast News. Our good friend and supporter of what we do, and then you have brought it to another level by publishing these stories, publicizing these stories. You and your good buddy, our good buddy Jeff Renfro.
Yep.
Who this story we're going to talk about today, Vickie Cook, I think was pre.
It was. We
Jeff.
did this one. Let's see. It was back. We profiled this
I think
in
it was in
20.
July.
Yeah, 2017. So this was one of the earlier ones that we did. I think this was even before we called it Unsolved. So this is one of the first ones.
But this one, it's still. I went back and watched it, and we'll watch it here too. But it's good. I mean, Jeff does a great job. He does a wonderful job.
You can tell the ones he's done.
but yeah, this one was a little bit different. But it wasn't. Remember when you first started? I mean, like you came by yourself, set up a camera,
Yep.
interviewed, and then
It was harder to find archive video,
Yeah.
So we didn't have archive video, unfortunately, for this one.
No, but the evolution of your series has been pretty good. But this one I thought was really well, because when I first started looking at it, oh gosh, this one's not Jeff. I wonder if Katie's gonna be. She'll be like, don't show that one.
No, I thought it had really good information in it.
It did.
Yeah.
The anniversary of this one is coming up at the end of the month, and when I was trying to figure out a story to do, I kind of went back to the beginning, because we've done a couple of recent ones. Yep. That you had done, and so I thought, what fits into this segment with the month of June, and a story we haven't done. We reached out to the family and let them know that we were going to re-air it. I like to go back and keep getting this information out there in hopes that someone will come forward. So let's get into it with this one. This is Vickie Lynn Cook. She lived here in Jacksonville, Florida. She was 19 years old, a mother of 2.
And murdered in a home where there were 6 children. She
was the only adult, I believe, in the house.
Correct.
With these 6 children. And I think 8 o'clock in the morning, the JSO gets a call out to a home invasion where she's been stabbed. Again, with 6 children in the house. None of them are harmed.
Yes, thankfully.
But she's stabbed on the couch in the living room. So JSO thinks that she probably knew her attacker.
Right, and they did say, Sergeant Jansen in the piece said that there was conversation between, one of the children told them there was conversation between Vickie and the person that killed her.
Yeah.
They wouldn't say what that conversation, was, because that's important to the investigation. But I feel like to me, to anyone who looks at these cases, if there's conversation, then you likely know each other.
Right. And you also think, like, she's on the couch in her living room. She's not running, screaming from the house. She's not, and it just kind of makes it sound like the person.
Like it was more casual, like you knew this person.
Was expected to be there. She unfortunately dies on the way to the hospital from stab wounds. This was 2001, June 30th, 2001. So we're coming up on the 18th anniversary of that murder. So her children, her 2 children are now adults, young adults themselves. I don't remember exactly how old they were, but I think they were young.
They were young at the time.
But yeah, 18 years later, now they're young adults, and they still don't have those answers, and grew up this entire time without a mom. You talked to Vickie's aunt, Lisa, that lives in Atlanta.
And she was so nice. And, when you call and you reach out to families, I could feel the hope in her voice that it was getting attention again. People are talking about it, and I told her, I'm like, if I hear anything, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
But we just profile these to try and garner that attention.
And we still are waiting. I mean, obviously, nobody's told us that anything has broken on the case. Although I do, having a good relationship with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, I have heard that this is one of those cases that they didn't pull off the shelf, review, and then put back on the shelf.
Right.
There's been enough with technology, with these statements that these children made at the time. In fact, in the piece, Sergeant Jansen says they have a person of interest or persons of interest.
Right, that they're looking at.
Yeah, there were actually 2 suspects that were described. I won't say identified, but a black male, 5'11", 200 pounds with dreadlocks is the guy that goes into the house and allegedly stabs Vickie Cook and then leaves. And there's a second black male. The first black male gets into a black Lexus. The second black male gets out of the Lexus and steals an Ford Astro van.
Yes, and it had a tag. Now, sorry, let me look at my notes down here.
Yeah, it was. I don't have the tag, but it was a 1990 blue and silver Ford Astro van.
Correct. The tag number was A790274. I don't know if that means anything to anybody, but that was.
And
what
was
the
it
tag
a temporary tag?
Temporary tag.
Yeah, temporary tag. I remember seeing that in it. So, look, some of these cases we talk about, and there's nothing. I mean, there's no physical evidence. There's
no witness to anything.
No suspect description. Those are hard enough, for families. But when that somebody saw these 2 individuals and one ended up stealing a van, you're committing more crimes. Like it just, gosh, there's a lot more here to go on than in some cases, and that's probably why the family has that hope every time we're able to put one of these this story out there.
Yeah.
They're waiting for that one person that's finally willing to come forward.
And stabbings are they're very personal. They're, especially when you're going back and looking at DNA evidence. I mean, you're close quarters with that person, so there is a lot more to go off of in those instances.
Yeah. These suspects, we talk about it all the time. So now where are they? You know what I mean?
18
They're living
years later.
in our neighborhoods. They're down the street from us and in line behind us at the bank. So that it's still a sense of urgency 18 years later. Somebody that has gotten away with this once.
And it not only got away with it, but you did this in front of children. You did this in a home where there were kids. Like, it's just, that's even a whole nother level of awful.
It is. And you wonder what kind of impact that had on those 6 children. I mean, obviously the 2 children that are Vickie's had to deal with something they shouldn't have had to deal with and had to grow up without a mother. But now there's 4 other children in there that, maybe didn't witness the attack, but obviously
saw the
aftermath. I mean, I think Sergeant Jansen says that that at least one child was
present
in the room when it happened. So, what kind of person can stab another human being in front of a child?
Right. So that's why it is important to go back and profile these cases and hopefully get an arrest to get these people off the street.
Absolutely. We had some pictures of Vickie and I think you used some of these in the story.
Yep,
We'll show
Lisa
the story
gave us
too.
these.
Yeah, but we always want to put a face with these victims because it becomes so commonplace that we hear about another murder, and now mass casualty situations happening more and more frequently. That it's easy to disassociate ourselves from that being an actual human being that was that was someone's child, that was someone's niece, that was someone's mother, that was someone's sister.
It's part of why we like to tell, like in the story, a little bit of the backstory of who the victim is, because I think people connect with details. The fact that her favorite Bible story was Daniel in the Lion's Den.
Yeah.
I thought that was so sweet when Lisa told me that, because I'm like, think you connect with that when you look at your favorite story or your child's favorite story, and you realize you're not all that different from unfortunately, people who passed away.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what we want, is we want people to be able to relate. Because if you can't relate, then sometimes you don't really care, and we want people to care. We want people to understand how important this is, not just to Vickie's children and her aunt and the rest of her family,
But the community.
But the community is in general. We did a spotlight on this case on our website in April of 2017. We did the story with you guys. You guys did a story in July 2017, and then we did a billboard campaign around town, and it kind of ran from December of 2017 to March of 2018. And we rotated this billboard, and Vickie Cook was one of the cases that we rotated on that billboard, and it went around 3 or 4 different locations for a few weeks at a time or a month at a time, and again, we have so many cases in Florida that it's impossible to try to do one victim per billboard. There's no way we could ever afford to do that, but we threw up a few faces, a few victims, and kind of tried to direct people back to our site, just in hopes that maybe if you don't recognize one of those people, you can come to our site and recognize one of the others. But we've and I say all this just to say that we've tried to get this case out there in the last couple of years. We're trying again here today to reshare this information, get it out, because we know somebody out there has the information. It's just a matter of getting them to come forward. They can call the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. They can call the Cold Case Unit at 904-630-1157, or they can call Crime Stoppers, remain anonymous, and
1-866-845-TIPS.
Yeah,
I know that from saying it frequently.
And that's up to a $3,000 reward if the information leads to an arrest. So there's multiple ways. There's no excuse to not come forward and
you can be anonymous on Crime Stoppers. I mean, you are fully anonymous. They don't ask your name. They just give you a number, and that's the only way you're identified is via number. So you can call in and report these tips completely anonymously. If you were afraid 18 years ago, but it's weighed on your conscience, then call in.
Let's watch your segment, and then we can talk some more about it. So let's take a look.
On rolls of microfilm at the Jacksonville Library, there lies a haunting story. A mother, 19, stabbed to death in front of children. Her name was Vickie Cook. She was beloved by her family, the only daughter with 3 brothers. Lisa Cook, Vickie's aunt, says even as a little girl, Vickie's favorite story was that of David and the Lion's Den. Her family never imagined, though, that her home would become the scene of the fight of her life. It was just after 8 a.m. on June 30th, 2001. She was inside her apartment at 1422 27th Street West with her children and 4 other children when a man came inside in what the police report described as a home invasion.
I believe she knew her assailant in this case. She was stabbed while she was laying down on her couch in her living room. And of the children, 2 of them were nearby. One, I believe, was in the same room.
The children were not hurt, but Vickie died on the way to the hospital. Lisa Cook spoke with us from Atlanta.
We couldn't believe it at first. We just couldn't believe it. It was just a shock to all of us.
And Lisa says that Vickie was planning on moving back to Atlanta with her daughters and going to nursing school. The man that stabbed her was described as a black male around 5'11" and 200 pounds with dreadlocks and left the scene in a black Lexus. Witnesses outside the home told police a second suspect, also a black male, got out of the Lexus and stole a 1990 Ford Aerostar van from in front of Vickie's home. The children inside were able to give detectives an important piece of information.
And there was some conversation had between the assailant and Vickie in this case.
The details of which Sergeant Jansen says JSO does not want to reveal just yet. But he does say the Cold Case Unit is reopening this case and applying new technology to the evidence they collected 16 years ago.
We do have persons of interest in this case, and we're looking at them. We're looking at them pretty hard at this point.
And Vickie's family is ready for the answers.
16 years is too long, though. It's time for him to be brought to justice, him or them.
Because the ending of this horrific story is still waiting to be written.
Yeah, so that one was interesting because unfortunately we couldn't find any old archive video, and we like to use as much archive video as possible because I think that helps jog people's memories.
Yeah.
But the library, the Jacksonville Public Library, thankfully they archive the newspapers, and that's been hugely helpful in a lot of these cases. So we were able to reach out to the Jacksonville Public Library. They found that microfilm where the original stories were on it. And then the apartment where it happened, it was actually still there. So we were able to go back out, and I know it's not exactly the same as it was,
Right, but that
prior,
was
but
you showed the door with the address above it, and it is interesting because some of the other cases you've done stories on, specifically like in the 70s with the 5 girls that went missing, like
huge landscape change.
Yeah, if you didn't have the library to go and pull those stories,
I don't know how we would have
there
done
was
that.
nothing. If maybe there was one news station in town back then, but it just was a very different dynamic. We've talked about it before, but this is a 2001 case, so it was a little odd, I guess, that you wouldn't have archive and have to pull.
It's one of those where we were in that weird transition period between like tapes to switching to like digital, and unfortunately it's like you just have this weird, sometimes you can find stuff from that era, sometimes you can't. With archives, you're in a huge room trying to find stuff, and I just couldn't find that one.
Yeah, I bet that is. You think about all of the stories that are in one broadcast, and then having to, somebody
go back and try and find everything.
Try to actually document that. I would imagine
and they
it's
may
not that uncommon for something to not show up.
No, and it might have been there and I couldn't find it because they don't also, at the time if they went out to film it, they probably didn't know her name was Vickie Cook. So it would just be sometimes like murder scene or murder on West 27,
Yeah, and I know that there was some spellings with a Y in Vickie and some with the IE, and
spelling names can throw you.
Spelling's always one of those things. Human error. You're trying to get the information out there. So who knows? But that's one of those things that are kind of a part of the process that you just have to roll with. And
I've also gotten a lot better at our archive room in the last 2 years, just like sorting through it.
I bet. You're probably, everybody comes to you now, don't they?
Now I can find it faster than anyone else now in that room.
That's interesting. Well, when you were talking to Lisa, Vickie's aunt, you talked to her a little bit earlier, and it may have been even before we went live, about just the you could hear hope in her voice. We were just noting that your story ran almost 2 years ago. In a month and a half, that will be a 2-year-old story. It doesn't seem like
it's been that long.
But it has. From watching the story, we know that they were looking at some evidence. They had suspects, persons of interest. Nothing happens fast in the world of cold cases. If it was all easy, they would have solved it in 2001.
Right. It's not a TV show.
Yeah, there's reasons why this case is cold. Reasons why it needs to be brought back into the public eye. And hopefully, maybe this time will be the time that the right person sees it. That's the stuff that's out of our control. We can put the information out there. We don't get to decide who sees it.
Yeah. Or sees it repeatedly. Like you saw it once and thought about it, you see it again. You want that to be at the forefront of that person's mind.
Absolutely. And I know here in our office, we called and spoke to Lisa and let her know that we were going to be sitting here doing this, asked her and her family to watch it if they could, if not live, to watch it, this evening or whatever. So hopefully they see this, they share it. Other people see this locally and share it, and we see if we can get some more traction on this. Again, Crime Stoppers Anonymous, 866-845-TIPS.
Which is 8477.
Yeah, anonymous, up to $3,000 reward for an arrest, not an arrest and conviction. Like, you won't be waiting for years for that money. If that tip leads to an arrest, the sheriff's office lets Crime Stoppers know an arrest has been made, and I think within a few weeks that money is deposited, and
you got it.
About that time, be back to school shopping, or
spend it how you want.
Yeah, spend it how you want. But and then obviously, if you're not afraid to come forward and give your be willing to testify and not have to remain anonymous, you can call the sheriff's office directly and give them the information that they're looking for. We're talking about, with this kind of description, with a car, and I mean, it may
Someone
not
got
take
a
much.
good look.
Yeah. It may not take much to make take this case from unsolved to solved.
Right, and I would even encourage, the person who, if you're watching this and you gave officers that description, or you did witness something that night, it never hurts to reach back out to them and say, I saw that, I saw Project Cold Case talking about Vickie Cook. I was the person that lived next door and saw this. Did you have any questions for me?
Exactly.
It never hurts to reach back out, because who knows, phone numbers may have changed. Maybe they can't get a hold of you now.
Yeah,
and
that's
they
a
would
really
love to
good
talk to you
point.
again.
Maybe something that you gave them that they wrote down never made it into the report somehow. You know what I mean?
From the original officer
the original
to now.
officer, the patrol officer, whatever it was. I mean, it would be a great opportunity to follow up and make sure that everything you did give them back then made it,
Because
where it needed to go.
They're so nice in Cold Case. I'm sure they would appreciate you reaching out and talking to them, and then they have a way of contacting you if they do have some type of question later on.
Yeah. So the suspect description again, there were 2 black males. One appears, from what we understand, to stay in the car. A black male described as 5'11", 200 pounds with dreadlocks went into the apartment.
Exchanged conversation with her before murdering Vickie.
For stabbing Vickie Cook. He leaves the apartment, and the other individual gets out of the car. We don't really have much, except it was a black male. I don't remember there being any physical description of him, except that then he goes and steals a 1990 Ford Astrovan.
Yeah, with a temporary tag.
With a temporary tag. So if a black Lexus, I mean, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
Somebody knows a guy that fits that description that used to drive a black Lexus and probably knew Vickie Cook.
Right, exactly. So you go back, if you knew her and you think back to the friend group, who fits that description?
Right.
Who do you? I feel like people always have some type of suspicion when something like this happens. So let police know who that is. And I do find it odd that they stole a van afterward.
Yeah.
Why not just get back in the same car and leave? So I do find that strange.
And then you have all these questions now, and we don't,
no answer.
Not questioning the investigators by any means, because we know
what the people did.
Was that van ever recovered? Was there fingerprints in that van that leads to one of them? As we know, sometimes a lot of times it's a change in relationship. So were those 2 men good friends back then?
Maybe not friends now.
Maybe not friends now. Are they willing to talk? One thing I was thinking about as we were discussing is, these were children in the apartment, and I don't know what age they were, but I do wonder, if they remember something that they didn't say back then. Maybe they were scared.
It sounds like one was old enough to obviously communicate to police that there was conversation and what kind of that was about.
Because they weren't willing to share what that conversation was, which obviously says something. You got to read between the lines there that there's something specific that was said that was so important that releasing it could jeopardize the investigation. So there's opportunities here to solve this and to give Vickie's family the answers that they've sought for going on 18 years now.
Yeah, and even if you didn't know her family and you only knew Vickie, when we talking to Lisa, she was so nice, so helpful, and so hopeful. Like, to think about the closure you could bring to a family after 18 years. I can't even begin to tell you how grateful they would be.
Yeah. I mean, that family would never be able to express it, appropriately. But there's something about, being at the mercy of other people doing the right thing and coming forward, where you really are powerless. It's your loved one. It's the thing you want more than anything in this world, and you have no way of getting it, personally. And there's people out there, there's someone out there that can give them that, and it's an awkward position to be in as a family member, where you are at the mercy of somebody doing the right thing,
right.
and sometimes, potentially putting themselves in a place where they maybe don't feel safe, to come forward, to be willing to testify. It's, we're not making light of those things, the difficulties that go along with that stuff, and the fear that could be involved in that. That is a very real thing. But I tell you, to be able to provide that to a family, I don't know of a greater gift you could give somebody. So if you're out there with that information, hopefully, our little pep talk here has been enough.
And even if maybe you weren't there, but you were just a friend of Vickie's, I would still encourage calling officers, because I don't think there's such a thing as too much information.
No.
To talk to them about who she was, what was she doing, what was she involved in before it all happened. Maybe you have insight that, again, like maybe those case notes just didn't make it to them. You never know. And
You really don't. I was at a conference training thing recently, and somebody was presenting a cold case to us, and they said 10 years after this murder that newspaper article ran, and they got a call from somebody that said, I thought this case was solved. I saw them dump a body out of a trunk of a car on a bridge into the river, and I called you guys, and I never heard anything back. And I gave a description as I remembered it then. And then when I never heard back, I just assumed that the case was solved. And then I opened the paper 10 years later, and it's not solved. And so, of course, he didn't remember things as clearly, 10 years later. But
it was a lead they didn't have.
But it was, they're all going, they had no record of that call coming in. He had called, a dispatcher or somebody that did not, somewhere it got lost. And that happens. I mean, unfortunately, we all make mistakes too, and it can happen. So, don't assume that
because you told something to someone 18 years ago that it's made its way for sure.
Right. Right. I mean, I've heard stories, where people are like, well, we've known all along, and it's like, well, did anybody bother to call police? Well, no.
It's like, well.
I don't know, what else we can add to this case other than, those are the facts as we know them. Again, here she is. Vickie Cook is 19 years old. She's a mother of two. June 30th, 2001. She's watching her two children and four other children in her apartment when someone comes in, someone that she knows comes in. There's a conversation, and then she's stabbed. She dies on the way to the hospital. Her children, two young children, are left without a mother. As we quickly approach the 18-year anniversary of her murder, her family is still desperate for answers and looking for some sense of justice in this case, and we're hoping to help by just getting the information out there.
I mean, at 19 years old, think about how much life you still have to live at 19. From what I remember, I think Lisa said she was going to be moving back to Atlanta soon and was going to be a nurse, I think it was.
Yeah, go to nursing school.
So she was, she had young daughters. Like, she had so much life and had so much more to give. And so whoever did this to obviously commit a crime, not only murder, but murder in front of children, is horrific. And that person should face some type of justice.
Yeah. We just can't have people like that are willing to stab another human being, particularly in front of
young
children. That's somebody that
we don't need them on our streets.
We don't need them wandering around every day. So, thanks, Katie, for coming in again this month.
No, it's my pleasure.
And working on a case with us and raising some more awareness for it. We'll continue to do these as long as you keep putting them out there on
Yeah.
First Coast News.
After this, I want to talk with you about the next ones. That we're
Yeah,
gonna do.
yeah. Let's start scheduling. I've got an ongoing list of ones. I got a lot of families that are anxious, you know, to have their loved ones' story told on TV, and so hopefully we can get some more going for you, and we'll promote those once they're done, and then we'll have you back in to talk about them again. So thanks again, Katie. Thanks for everybody that watched us today. Share this video in hopes that somebody out there will see it and be willing to come forward and help Vickie Cook's family get the answers they deserve. Real quick, just a couple topics. Our scholarship that we have available to anyone going to any college anywhere in the country, $1,000 scholarship. All they have to do is fill out a short application, a one-page application, and give us a one-page essay on the struggles that they've overcome and what they're going to do with that education to make the world a better place. You can get that information on our website, projectcoldcase.org/scholarship, and the deadline is July 1st, so we want to see some applications coming in. We also are selling Jaguar tickets through our organization, and we get a portion of every ticket sold. So projectcoldcase.org/Jaguars will give you that information as well. And then our partnership with Hard Knot Designs. Now, if you use the discount code PCC, you receive 10% off, and we get a donation, both. So that's hardknotdesigns.com, and knot is spelled KNOT. So one thing we're going to do, I'm kind of excited. I should have mentioned this earlier. We had brainstorm. We're always trying to look at ways to raise awareness for cases as often as possible. And so we did this thing where we're going to do remembrances at the end of each of these Facebook Lives. We're going to go back and show the cases from that week that are unsolved, that we have, that have been submitted through our database. So because we're starting now, this is starting June 1st through the 10th. These are all the cases, or these are the cases that the families are celebrating, or not really celebrating, but they're honoring and remembering their loved ones this week after some a few years and some decades of unsolved cases. So this is how we're going to close out the Facebook Lives from now on, is with these remembrances. And again, an opportunity for the families to be recognized, to honor their loved ones, and then hopefully if somebody has information, they'll come forward on these cases and go to the respective law enforcement agencies or Crime Stoppers in that area. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.